The 1970 Washington quarter might look like just another regular piece of change, something you'd expect to find in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or even in a forgotten coin jar at home. But here's the twist. Some 1970 quarters are actually worth thousands of dollars. That's right, this simple 25-cent coin, which millions of people once spent on snacks, payphones, and vending machines, can turn into a small fortune if you happen to own the right one. Today, we're going to dive deep into the history, design, minting details, errors, varieties, and the jaw-dropping values that make the 1970 Washington quarter one of the most exciting coins for collectors and treasure hunters. First, let's rewind a bit and set the stage. The Washington Quarter series began in 1932, created to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Instead of a one-year commemorative coin, it became the permanent quarter-dollar design, continuing for decades. By 1970, the Washington quarter had already been circulating for almost 40 years, and it had gone through some big changes. Most importantly, just a few years earlier, in 1965, silver was removed from quarters. So the 1970 quarter is part of the clad era, made of copper-nickel instead of 90% silver. But don't let that fool you into thinking it has no value. Some 1970 quarters carry far more worth than silver itself. Now, here's where things get interesting. The 1970 Washington quarter was struck at 3 mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia version has no mint mark, the Denver mint quarters have a little D mint mark, and the San Francisco mint produced proof coins with an S. Most of these coins were struck in huge numbers. Hundreds of millions were produced at Philly and Denver, and over 2 million proofs came from San Francisco. So naturally, the average circulated 1970 quarter you find in change is just worth face value. But the story doesn't end there. Collectors are especially fascinated with varieties and errors from this year. One of the most famous and valuable is the 1970 S-proof quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter. Yes, you heard that right. Somehow, during the minting process, a leftover planchet from a 1941 Canadian coin ended up being struck with the Washington quarter design. This mistake created a rarity that has sold for over $35,000 at auction. Imagine finding a quarter like that sitting in a collection or tucked away in an old proof set. It's the dream of every coin hunter. But that's not the only treasure from 1970. There are also valuable double-die varieties and mint errors. Some 1970 quarters show doubling on the lettering or the date, and collectors will pay handsomely for strong examples. There are also off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other dramatic minting mistakes that can push values into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Proof coins with deep cameo contrast, where the frosted details stand out sharply against mirror-like fields, are also highly sought after, especially in pristine condition. Now, let's talk about condition and grading, because that's where value skyrockets. A regular 1970 quarter in worn, circulated condition might just be worth 25 cents. But in mint state grades, especially MS67 and higher, prices can jump. For example, a 1970 D quarter graded MS67 by PCGS has sold for over $2,000, simply because so few exist in that high of a grade. The same goes for the Philadelphia issue. Top-quality examples can bring in huge premiums. Proof coins graded PR69 Deep Cameo or PR70 can also fetch hundreds of dollars, even without errors, because perfection is rare. This is why collectors pay so much attention to luster, strike quality, and surfaces. A coin that looks flawless under magnification is far rarer than you'd expect, even among millions of minted pieces. And once you combine top condition with a famous variety or error, you're talking serious money. Another fascinating point about the 1970 Washington quarter is its place in American coin history. This was an era when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with minting processes after the silver era ended. The clad composition was still relatively new, and quality control wasn't always perfect. That opened the door for more varieties and errors to slip through the cracks. It was also the year that the San Francisco Mint was focusing heavily on producing high-quality proof coins, making the 1970 S-proof one of the most collectible issues of the decade. So why are collectors so obsessed with these quarters? Part of it is the thrill of the hunt. Imagine sorting through rolls of quarters, hoping to spot that tiny mint mark or doubling that could mean you've just found a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Another part is history. Owning a coin from 1970 connects you to a time when a gallon of gas was just 36 cents, when jukeboxes still played vinyl records, and when coins were actually used daily for everything from payphones to parking meters. Let's break down some key values so you get a clear picture. Regular 1970 quarter in circulation, worth face value. 1970 P or 1970 D in MS67 condition, worth $1,000 to $2,000 plus. 1970 S proof in PR69 DCAM, worth $50 to $300. 1970 S proof struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter, worth $30,000 to $35,000 plus. Error coins, off-center, clipped, double die, worth $100 to $1,000 depending on severity.